Hi, Dr. Tassone. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's been a long time since we recorded one. It's been like over a year because I remember interviewing you a year, like right before I moved.
Yes, it's been great. Even though we live in Austin, you don't ever come to town. You're
I
so
know. I'm a little far out. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead and reintroduce yourself, though, to any new listeners, who you are and what you do.
Sean Tassone. I'm an OBGYN out here in Austin. Have a private practice. I also have a board certification in integrative medicine, and I have a PhD in philosophy, which sounds horribly boring, but actually it's mind-body medicine therapies, where I went around the world and learned with indigenous shamans in Peru and Brazil, and just kind of learned different techniques of healing.
That's really cool. No, that sounds actually really interesting now that you actually explain what it is.
But when you say philosophy, people are like, huh? How does that go with gynecology?
So you've taken care of over 40,000 women. And from these women, what are the most common problems you see with hormones? Since this is what we're kind of talking about today, and we'll dive into your reboot that you made as well.
The most common thing I get is, how do you know what the problem that you have? First of all, is a hormonal imbalance. So the number one things that I would say I see, primarily, obviously, weight gain is number one. Things like insomnia, things like hot flashes, mood swings, irritability. A lot of women will just think that that's part of getting older, or they'll be told that the two things I see is women that finally reach me are, they are either told that their hormones are normal, they've had their hormones drawn and everything's normal, or it's just part of getting older and it's something you kind of have to suck up and deal with. And the reality is none of that is true. If you have problems with weight gain, and you have problems with insomnia and mood swings, hot flashes, irritability, those are all probably related to some sort of a hormonal imbalance.
Right. And do you feel like, I know you said as you get older, so I know obviously you see older women, but can it hit young women as well?
I would say I see hormonal imbalances. First of all, you have to think of women that are in their 20s. Most of them are on birth control pills, and that's a hormonal imbalance. I mean, that's a woman that is mostly estrogen dominant, which is a weight gain situation. Now, I know we tell women all the time that birth control pills don't cause weight gain, but they sure can in some patients. But yeah, mostly I would say the core women that have problems are probably 35 to 55, but we see women that are imbalanced in their 20s, and then women that are in their late 50s and 60s who are on hormone replacement. You think of women that don't have a uterus, that are on just estrogen with no progesterone, that's a hormonal imbalance.
Right, right. And I know you specialize in doing that hormone replacement therapy and stuff. And they're becoming so common, imbalances. What's going on? Why is that happening?
Primarily, I think one reason is we live in a society where our diets are awful, which I'm sure that's kind of more your thing. We eat foods that have hormones in them. We eat too many phytoestrogens, like soy, that's pretty much in everything. We eat GMO type foods that are bad for us. We have things like, I think, hormones in the water and the food. We have bisphosphonates and poly BPPs that are in the food supplies. And we have an epidemic of obesity, and fat is probably the number one producer of estrogen in the world. And if you're overweight, you're going to produce too much estrogen. So I think a lot of it is nutrition based.
Yeah. Do you feel like it's also cosmetic based as well?
As far as the cosmetics you use?
Yeah, just like
Oh,
stuff
gosh.
like lotions and like all the chemicals that they put. I know you mentioned like BPA and things like
Yeah,
that.
I mean, if you look at most of the cosmetics, if you're not using a brand that's organic or more natural based, of course, it's going to affect you. If you think about it, most of the hormones that I use are placed on the skin, which means you're absorbing them. If you're putting
Right.
cosmetics on your skin, you're putting sunscreens on your skin, you're putting all these things on that have chemicals in them, they're absorbing right in.
Right, right. I know some people, obviously nutrition is the first one, but I know some people, I feel like it's kind of hard for them to grasp that things that we put on our skin, like even something simple shampoo, they're like, how is that affecting my hormones? Can it really make
Or
that?
lipstick is huge. I mean, if you look at women, I mean, it's a funny thing, but when they get the lipstick on their teeth, if you think about it, the lipstick you put on you're swallowing some of it, and
Yeah.
most of it isn't good for you.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And I know that since you've been doing this for so long, you've launched a new program, the 7-day hormone reboot, which is amazing, might I add. So what exactly is included in this?
So the hormone reboot goes back to, as I'm sure you're aware, my website has a quiz, and the quiz is something that I have distilled from my 40,000 visits down into a 35 or so question quiz that will give women kind of the energetic aspect of their hormonal imbalance. So
Okay.
estrogen dominance, I call the queen, testosterone deficiencies, the nun, and it'll give you kind of a guide. The hormone reboot then would be the second step in that aspect. It's kind of a way to get you started. So it'll focus on a spiritual practice. Maybe every day there's going to be a guided meditation or a journal entry. There's going to be talk about foods and nutrition, exercise, things that you can do. There's going to be talk about the energetic aspects of healing, whether that's a essential oil or acupuncture or something along those lines, and then proper supplementation and even hormonal modulation. I call that that six-step process that I come up with called SHINES, which is a spiritual practice, hormones, infoceuticals, which is the energetic aspect of things, nutrition, exercise, and supplements. So the reboot's a way for you to just get started, and it's for everybody. Everybody's going to start from the same place, whether you're the nun or the overachiever or whatever archetype you are. And then from there, we'll eventually get you into a program that's based on your specific archetype.
Okay. Okay. Do you feel like it's a little, I know with food, some people are like, yeah, I can change my diet, no problem. With more of the meditation and the other aspects of it, the lifestyle aspects, do you find it hard for people to start implementing?
Well, I will be the first to admit it's hard for me, and I've seen it. I see it all the time. You know, we talk about stress, and what does stress do is it raises cortisol. So a higher level of cortisol is going to make your estrogen go up as well. And when cortisol and estrogen are up, your insulin doesn't work as well. So you make more insulin, which then makes you store more fat, and then that makes you make more estrogen. And so it's this horrible cycle. So I can't tell you how many times I have patients come in that say they're eating clean,
Right.
or they're eating paleo or whatever, but they're still gaining weight. And that could be the thyroid, but it could also be the fact that your cortisol is super high because you can't get your stress under control. I mean, in our society, you hear about it all the time, but you know, used to be our ancestors would run away from a tiger, their cortisol would go up, but we're never not running away from the tiger. So we're constantly on that hamster wheel. So yeah, even just 5 minutes, if you could just sit still. My meditation, what I do, because I have a hard time calming the monkey mind. You know, I shouldn't say can't, but I have a hard time not thinking about things. So I
Right.
wake up at around 5 o'clock and I lay in bed and I just think about my day, but I'll also try to think about the things that I want to attract to myself, whether it's you know, people or you know, the way I look or the way I want to be. I put that out there, basically the law of attraction. But for me, that's kind of a meditative process.
Right. Right. Do you use any of the apps out there?
I use actually a walking app because I like to walk. And for me, walking is kind of a meditative process. Like I will, as I walk, I will say things. So I'll repeat, I love you, kind of something along those lines for a mile or two. But I also use it to take me to new places. Like I like to map out new places before I go and see different areas, you know, like Town Lake, which is in Austin. I found a spot the other day that it was just a little inlet where there was some water and it was just super quiet, and I never would have known that was there. So I can mark different areas on that app and go back to them.
Oh, that's awesome. I need to do that. I mean, I'm so stuck out here in like West Austin. I just need to go. I haven't even seen like Lady Bird Lake or anything like
Yeah.
that yet. Need to get out there. After the 7 days of women doing, let's say they follow it completely, meditations, changing their diet, things like that, what would you say, how would they expect to feel coming out of it?
Well, I think it depends on where you're starting from. Some people may already do some of these things. And I don't think that it's what it should feel like is you should feel one, you should feel a little bit better in the sense that you have a little bit more control. Because I think what happens is a lot of this hormonal imbalance stuff is you feel out of control. You can't control the things that are happening to you. And it's basically because you have all these things going on. So it gives you a bit more of a grasp. I think, like, you know, if I tell people if you can eat ketotic, or if you can put yourself into ketosis, maybe for 2 weeks, then it becomes a habit, right? I mean, it's something that you then want to go for. I think if with the reboot, if you're practicing on your spiritual aspects and you're looking at things differently, like how am I eating? How am I exercising? And you do that for a week, it really just gives you a little bit more control over things. And so I think you feel a little bit calmer, you feel a little bit safer. And that gives you the ability then to say, okay, now I'm going to go deeper. And I'm working with somebody in town. I don't know if you know Allison Schaff from Prep Dish. Allison has a great, so part of my further plan, like let's say you're estrogen dominant, would be my next course would be you have a diet plan set up for you that basically Allison Schaff, who's a chef, puts together for that archetype, where you just hit Instacart and you can have the groceries delivered to your house. I mean, let's take, because if you're like me and you work and you got kids and you're busy, the last thing you need is to have to think about, oh, what am I going to buy that's not estrogen related, blah, blah, blah. And so I think it gives you that aspect of, okay, now I can move into this phase where I'm going to implement all the things that I learned for that week, and I'm going to go deeper.
Right. It makes it really simple, definitely. And can you give us a little teaser, sneak peek into, like, I don't know, let's say top 5 foods that are good for hormone imbalancing?
Well, if you look at things like proteins, you can break it down into proteins, fats, things like that. You're looking at things like some beans and different types of seeds, but basically, hormone-free chicken, beef, or pork, depending on, or fish is depending on wild caught, making sure that it's organic. As far as the good fats, obviously coconut oil or avocados. I'm really a fan of butter, as horrible as it sounds, because growing up as a kid, butter was horrible. But butter now is not actually as horrible as it was, especially if it's a grass-fed butter. And watching things like sugar, because sugar is a hormone disruptor. The vegetables, things like beets and spaghetti squash, sweet potatoes, kelp, cilantro for herbs, or things like cinnamon, which is great for blood sugar, turmeric, which is an all-time favorite of mine. You could get turmeric almond milk, cumin, garlic, and ginger. So there's all kinds of, and if the people go to my website, they can get, I have a guide called the Balanced Food Guide, and it's a 49-page, really pretty pictures, has all these listed, and that's free. They just put in their email address and their first name, and they can get that for free.
Awesome. I know that you mentioned like ketosis and carbs, and I feel like right now we're a very like carb phobic society, which is fine, because obviously there's tons of refined carbs and processed foods out there and stuff. But what do you feel like taking carbs to the extreme of ketosis, or just severely limiting them, is always like a good option for if you have a hormonal imbalance? I mean, I know it depends on like where you're at and where you're starting from.
I'm not a huge like ketosis in the sense that you need to like have large ketones all the time. I don't think it's bad to go there. My feeling of ketosis is, that whole intermittent fasting, or what they call crescendo fasting, where you go to bed or you stop eating at 7 p.m. and then you maybe don't eat again until lunchtime the next day. That's a form of ketosis. But maybe for women, only doing that 2 or 3 times a week, not doing that every day, because that can mess up your hormones. But I always think too, you can get a lot of carbs from vegetables,
Right.
and you shouldn't be afraid of those, or some beans, and just not going crazy. But as you know, there's a lot of vegetarians and vegans out there that are overweight, because you can overdo it with those foods as well. And we're carb phobic, but I kind of feel like if you can pick it or kill it, then it's probably okay to eat it. If it's in a bag or a box, then maybe you should limit the exposure there. But there's nothing wrong with beets. I love beets. I eat them all the time.
Or sweet potatoes or anything like that.
You're gonna eat potatoes? Yeah, sweet potatoes.
And then how long do you feel like hormone imbalances takes, to, I guess, get back on track? I know that's also like
it depends on where you are. I mean, a huge hormone imbalance that we see all the time now is polycystic ovarian syndrome. Yep. And those women gain weight, and the problem is there's a set weight for every person, that if you're 145 but you hit 160, all of a sudden PCOS kind of turns on. We don't know why. For those women, it's losing 15 pounds to get back to that 145. How long does that take them? I don't know, but But for some people, if it's, and it depends on the imbalance too and why you have it. So for people that just are cortisol dominant, like they have way too much cortisol, who I call the workaholics, it might be a little bit faster for them, because what they really need to do is just stop. They need to, as weird as it sounds, don't work out like a crazy person because your cortisol is already too high. Maybe slow it down and walk down lake instead of running 5 miles. And when I tell women that, they freak out, like, what am I going to do? I can't not exercise. Well, you're burning the candle with a blowtorch. So yeah, it's okay. So they may get a quicker response than somebody who's testosterone deficient, because testosterone deficiency may take a while to fix with just foods. I mean, some of those women may need hormones. And that's the thing, is hormones, the nice thing about the 6-step process is the hormonal modulation is part of it, and it's a quick fix because you're giving the person hormones. But if you want to go slower and you want to go drug-free, you want to go self-paced and things like that's what the reboot is it's a drug-free, self-paced way online to do this at the way you want, and you can do spirituality, and that will help, and it will change things. It just takes a little bit longer.
How does someone know what, to the point of when they actually need, a testosterone supplement? Because I know people they do want to jump on because they want that quick fix.
Well, as far as knowing, I kind of look at it like, I always ask women when they come in, is it interfering with the way that you want to live your life? And if say testosterone deficiency or decreased libido is affecting you because you want to be more sexually active, not because your husband wants you to be more sexually active, because that's like every husband in the world. But you want to be more sexually active, or it's affecting the way that you're doing workouts, or you're osteopenic or osteoporotic because of the testosterone deficiency, then I think it just depends on the reason. But I think it's really, if it's interfering with the way that you want to live your life, and you've tried some other things and it's just not working. But if I have a woman that's in full-blown osteoporosis, and she has no testosterone, I would probably recommend it immediately, because we don't want her to lose more bone mass. And she can then start on the exercise part, which the testosterone will help with, if we have her lifting weights, to get some bone density back. And then she can work on things like vitamin D and calcium and diet. But it may just be a multifaceted approach. But I would say probably 90% of the time, we don't need hormones. We can start with other things.
If people do choose hormones, can they always, like you said, like start implementing certain things and then eventually like wean off?
Oh, of course. I look at hormones as being temporary anyway. So if I give somebody a compounded hormone, I will tell them probably after, let's get you feeling better first, and let's get you feeling better for a few months, and then if you use the Toppy Click container where there's 4 clicks before you rub the cream on, after about 6 months, go down to 3. And then go down to 2, and then try to wean yourself off of the medication. And most of the time, women can get off of things altogether.
Nice. And then is exercise, I know you kind of talked about it, is that covered inside the reboot?
Yes. It's not to the extent of, so it's not going to be personalized in the sense that it's going to talk about exercise like I talked about with the workaholic versus the queen. That's going to be on a deeper level in the other courses. But it's going to talk about ways to get out and do things like I talked about with walking, or, something that's kind of more of a one-size-fits-all that everybody could do. Yes.
Okay, cool. And when should that next step come out? Is it come out yet, or no, not yet?
Basically, it's in the works, and it will probably be out towards the end of July.
Yay! Good, exciting. Well, I think the 7-day reboot is a great place to start. So where can we find it, and where can we find you?
So the website that I talked about with the quiz is Tassone, TASSONEMD.com. The quiz is /quiz. So it's my last name, TassoneMD.com /quiz. The reboot would be, and at that main page, you can get the balanced guide if you want that, if you want to download that for free. If you go to the /quiz, it'll take you right to the quiz. And then the reboot is TassoneMD.com /Hormone Reboot. And that will take you right to the sign up page for that. And the nice thing about the reboot is it's self-paced. So you can just get it whatever day you want, and you can start it whatever day you want and go from there.
Nice. Is there any special offers or anything like that that's going on with it? Or?
Right now, the offer is eventually the course is going to be much higher. It's probably going to go up in price about $100, and we're offering it now for $49.97 because it's right in the beginning. We just did the beta test, so we're offering it to people right now for about 1/3 of the price.
Perfect. Sounds good. All those will be in the show notes too for easy clicking. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.